all dried up along with leisure development as well. So proposal as submitted creates equivalent of 21 full-time jobs. However, I think it needs to be accepted that the quantity, quality of these are possibly not what was originally envisaged.
Mike, I'm sorry to stop you halfway through the flow. The problem with the IT just not like Shirehall, just can't let all these segments. Sorry about that.
As submitted creates equivalent of 21 full-time jobs. However, I think it needs to be accepted that the quantity, quality of these are not what was originally envisaged.
Mike, I'm sorry to stop you. Sorry about the flow. The problem with the IT just not like Shirehall. Start again. Can't let all these segments. Sorry about that. Certainly.
What does he need to do? He hasn't shared it properly, so maybe my fault. I thought that he did it, so I probably told him. It's right. If you want to pause it, and you know that you'll pause it because I wasn't ready, so I didn't have it with the family. He hasn't shared it properly, so maybe my fault. I thought he did it. It's right. If you want to pause it, and you know that you'll pause it because I wasn't ready, so I didn't have it with the family.
Red Bull.
You go see something like
Yeah, we're okay now. Sorry about that now. Turning to highways, both Highways England and Highway Authority satisfied the access and egress arrangements. There's a right turn lane at the site for travelling east along Welshpool Road from the Shirehall roundabout. Those actually present for me there's no impact in terms of free flow of traffic going east into the town centre. Drainage, both the Environment Agency, the local legal authority, intend that drainage detail can be dealt with by appropriate conditions. And finally, the applicant has agreed to a contribution of £80,000 for development towards the North West Belief Road. Thank you.
Okay, so that's that. So we have speakers on that. Right, we have 3 speakers on this. We've got one written statement which is member of the family read out this. Local residents.
Thank you, Chair. This is a statement from Emma Ball. I've asked to speak today because I would like to highlight a number of issues to the committee. First, the opposition from the local member for this area, Councillor Leslie Picton, is mentioned in the planning officer's report at paragraph 3.1. She quotes, "The parish council has objected to the application along with the local member. The officer recommendation differs from the views of the parish council and local member, and these contrary views cannot reasonably be overcome by negotiation or the imposition of planning conditions, and the team manager planning in consultation with the committee chairman and vice chairman and the local member agrees the parish council has raised material planning issues and that the application should be determined by the committee." The end of the quote. I take this paragraph to mean that Councillor Picton's opposition is a significant factor among others and needs to be considered by this committee. The planning officer gives reasons for disagreeing with the opinion of Picton Parish Council and gives details of the council's objections. There is no similar account of the local member's opposition and reasons for disagreeing with it. I suggest that the committee needs to be given details of the local member's opposition. Second, the officer's report mentions a sum of money which has been offered by the developer as a contribution to the cost of the proposed North West Road. The sum is £80,000, half of what was agreed as part of the previous application for this site. That application, which was refused, covered a similar area, and this is given as the reason for us accepting such a reduced sum. Sorry, a smaller area, I beg your pardon. It is clear that it is insignificant in face of the enormous costs of the North West Road. The road, if built, will presumably bring increased custom to the service station because of the much increased traffic at Shirehall Island. For this reason, the developer should be asked to contribute a more significant sum. The North West Road does not yet have planning permission and has so far failed to satisfy statutory consultees, including Natural England. If it is refused, what will happen to the £80,000? Third, an important part of the North West Road proposal is to create better facilities for walking and cycling on Welshpool Road. Original plans were to close Welshpool Road to traffic at Shirehall Island. Clearly, this would have given the opportunity for a truly sustainable urban extension where through traffic was excluded, and most journeys would be short, local ones that could be walked or cycled. The planning application and officer's report still pay lip service to this vision, but it has basically been abandoned. This proposal, if approved, will add to the poor conditions for walking and cycling on Welshpool Road, which will see increased traffic, no protected cycle lanes, no pavement widening, and a flawed 20-mile-per-hour zone. Fourth, drainage. Concerns have been expressed by others about the plans for drainage. Shropshire Council last week passed a motion agreeing that, quote, "We are in a situation of cumulative overload on sewage and wastewater systems," end quote. The Council resolved that in future planning officers will be asked to include in their reports an assessment of the impact of the proposed developments on watercourses.
Thank you, Miranda. Right, the second speaker is Shelley Ballots, Victory Parish Council. Would you like to come forward, please? You have 3 minutes. Would you like a 30-second warning?
No, it might be wrong.
Okay, no problem.
I might be 3 minutes, 10 seconds.
Oh.
Is that all right? The planning application should be rejected because it's not compliant with the designated class for the site. According to the West Assume master plan, the site is designated as a Class E development. A petrol station and drive-through coffee shop, which is not eating, are classed as sui generis, not Class E. This master plan envisages distinctive, high-end, quality designed business and office space appropriate for a gateway. A petrol station does not meet this definition, failing policy CS8. It also fails policy S16.1 as it will not deliver the type of employment required. The application does not meet CS1 because it fails to explain how it will help Shropshire flourish or make a developing neighbouring development sustainable. There are already a significant number of petrol stations nearby and a restaurant and coffee shop just off the island. The officer's report also notes the application will not contribute significantly to Shropshire's economic growth. Accessing the site will cause dangerous queuing of traffic at Churncote Island, which is already badly congested at peak times. Vehicles coming off the island, then queuing to turn right, will cause a backlog of traffic onto and beyond the island. Shropshire Council Highways in the Development Management Report 4.1.3 say they don't have details of the access proposed for the current application. Without these details, it is impossible to make an informed decision on the safety of the proposal. The location of the fuel tanks wasn't marked on the plans. The tankers' access and egress could cause safety issues involving traffic movements, conflicts in the HGV area, and with the public utilising the site during tanker deliveries. Also, the tanker escape route isn't marked on the plans. The development contravenes NPPF paragraph 174 and 183. Detergents, degreasers and vehicle wash waters will be discharged to the foul sewer. This will adversely impact local environmental conditions because records show that the foul sewer regularly discharges its contents untreated into the local watercourse. There are grave concerns that the aquifer supplying the area's drinking water and the local watercourse providing water for local farming will be polluted or contaminated by underground storage. It is impossible to address these major concerns as the fuel tanks are not shown. A pump will be installed to remove significant surface ponding at the site. There appears to be no contingency should the pump fail. There is no comment in the Development Management Report to address this point. This poses a significant risk for increased flooding in the immediate area and knock-on effect in the surrounding area. Despite significant major developments in the Bicton area, no holistic view of the effect of all the developments on surface water and potential flooding events has been done. Developments have only been considered individually for their effect on flooding. Extra rain in one area might not be much of a concern, but when considered over the whole area of Bicton, the extra surface water draining off hard surfaces will one day add up to a serious flooding event.
Thank you very much, Shelley. You're absolutely to the second.
Speed reading. Would you like a copy?
Thanks very much, Shelley. Right. We have another speaker, Mike Broston, agent. You have 3 minutes. Like to come forward, please. Mike, you have 3 minutes. Would you like a warning?
Yes, please, if you don't mind.
30-second warning, then. Okay.
Yeah, good stuff. Thank you.
Very much.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I'm Michael Sproston. Oh, apologies. Which one do I press?
Right, I think.
That's
it, yep.
Yeah, good stuff.
Just bring it towards you, Vic.
You've got 30 seconds left now.
Don't start the clock yet. You're all right, Mike.
Yeah. Thank you. So, yeah, I'm Michael Sproston. I'm the agent representing the applicant Eurogarages. Eurogarages are a market leader in running petrol stations and roadside services. They operate across 10 countries. They have around 54,000 employees. If the application is approved, then Eurogarages will construct and operate the site. So firstly, it's great to see that the officer has recommended approval of this application. I believe it's a well-considered development that follows 2 previous applications by the same applicant. Significant amendments have been made to accommodate the veteran trees at the site, which I know that you all saw this morning. The council's categorisation of the trees as veteran meant that the applicant must allow for a much larger buffer to guarantee that the development will not impact their root protection areas. As such, the applicant scaled back the amount of development significantly and proposed further measures to deliver an on-site biodiversity net gain, which includes significant wildflower meadow planting surrounding the 2 central veteran trees at the site. All in all, the Eurogarages hope to erect a roadside services development, which is adaptable for changing customer demands. comprising a petrol station with an ancillary shop and drive-through. The two work together to provide drivers with a place to stop, rest, refuel or recharge their vehicles. I'm somewhat disappointed that the committee report does not explain that the proposals also provide for EV charging points. These are ultra rapid and they can charge vehicles in roughly 20 minutes. The infrastructure will also be placed at the site, which allows for the expansion of the charging points as the central government looks to increase the amount of these and phase out petroleum fuels in the future. I see this as a massive benefit of the scheme and other similar facilities within the area, all located roughly within Shrewsbury town centre, one of which is operated by the applicant. The council itself has declared a climate emergency, but it noted that the transport sector is Shropshire's highest source of greenhouse gas emissions. The need to decarbonise this sector is referred to as crucial by the council. Overall, I've listened to the comments from Parish Council and disagree that the application is not substantially different from the previous. Because of the local importance attributed to the trees, the applicant had to reduce the amount of development by removing the employment units and the other drive-through restaurant at the site. Overall, roadside services draws from existing traffic. That's the nature of them. Both National Highways and Shropshire Council Highways have raised no objection to the proposals.
30 seconds.
Acknowledging that they both significantly reduce the scale of development and reduce the number of trips generated. And also note that the access is aligned with the North West Relief Road and the works to be implemented along Oswestry Road. The application will generate 21 full-time equivalent jobs, as well as help to support existing positions in the supply chain. Staff will be members of and employees of Euro garages, and the applicant tends to find that the jobs are very attractive to people who need flexible working arrangement.
Thank you, Mike. Bring this up. Thank you very much. Thank you. Right. Now we're open to the floor. I'd like to kick off. Thank you, Truce.
Question for our highways officer, please, Mark. In the conversations that we had this morning around the site, one member mentioned about the future of the road, the North West Relief Road. Do we actually take that into account because it's something that's happening in the future, or do we judge this on what is actually there at the moment? Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Yeah, for the time being, obviously, I think we've got to look at this from the point of view of whether the North West Relief Road is built or not built at the end of the day. And in terms of the previous comments from National Highways and our comments, they've been based upon the road as it is at the moment, and not if the North West Relief Road takes place. Clearly, if it does take place, that is an additional benefit, obviously, because the part of what the North West Relief Road does is to remove traffic from Welshpool Road.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Joe. Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Chairman. Having had a good long think about it and looked at the plans again this afternoon, I'm going to have to go against those recommendations and recommend we refuse this plan. I think the junction itself is going to be far too dangerous. I've travelled that road many times during the week. It can take you 15 minutes to get across that junction on a busy morning. The only access to the site is from the Welshpool Road. So the main reason putting the site there is to feed the A5 trunk road. So 90% of the people using that petrol station will come in off the Turncoat roundabout. And will have to turn right across the flow of traffic across Welshpool Road onto the site. Yes, when they egress the site, they may well turn left onto the roundabout and use roundabout as an escape route. But the majority of the traffic coming in will come off the roundabout into the site off the roundabout. We're told that the relief road may or may not be a consideration, but it is a consideration. It's in our plans. It's a public document. We all know roughly where it's going to come out if it ever starts. So we have to give weight to that in our thoughts. I'm not too uncomfortable with the site itself, and I understand Bigton's concerns about the petrol storage, etc. That will all be taken in the master plan. My main concern and my reason for recommending refusal is that I think it's too dangerous and too close to the roundabout. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Gary. Looking down to the room, David.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, I'd back those comments actually about the access to this site. I think it's particularly dangerous. I know that I've known that around about 10 years, and it does create a lot of traffic, and pushing that traffic to get into the site now would be very dangerous. And so I very much support those comments. But I also think that we ought to give consideration to the provision for footpaths around there, which I don't think is in plans at all. I'm very concerned about that. And also drainage is another issue which I'm concerned about. I think one of the reasons for the previous application being refused, I think, was drainage. And I would very much like some assurance from the officers maybe about the drainage aspect. I noticed in the report it says that the details are to come further on after we've decided this, but I think that is a factor we should be taking into account now.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Nat.
Further from those comments regarding highways, I wonder if a site redesign to allow a left only off the main, off the A5 going eastbound would actually, and then means that the entranceway as we have now would simply become the exit, so that you always got a left hand going round. So it ensures that the traffic isn't backing up onto the roundabout. And if a plan looked like that came before us, I'd be far happier to support it. But as it stands, I can't support this. And, I fully support the comments I've already heard regarding the problems of the traffic there. Obviously, we have to look at the plan in front of us, and I'm not suggesting we're redesigning it now, but maybe if this plan was taken away and rethought, it might have a chance. But at the moment, I can't support it.
Thank you, Nat. Can I come back to you, Mark, for any advice you can give, please? By the way, everybody, Mark is the highways expert here.
Thank you, Chair. What I can say, Chair, is that obviously we've looked at this. National Highways have looked at this extensively, as they have done in relation to the North West Relief Road and changes to Turncoat Roundabout. And they are satisfied with the modelling that's been done. Stage 1 safety audit has been carried out by an independent auditor, which has not raised any material significant issues that can't be resolved. And as part of a Section 278 agreement, that would go through 2 additional processes of a Stage 2 audit, which is done at detailed design to look at ironing out any other safety measures, issues that might come through the actual full design carried out. And the Stage 3 audits carried out when the scheme is constructed. So all I can say, Chair, is that the scheme has gone through the due highway process in terms of capacity, modelling and safety auditing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mark. Can I come to you, Mike? Would you like to make any comments?
Thank you, Chair. The issue in relation to drainage, and I hear what people are saying. This obviously involves both the Environment Agency, who made comment on this, and the local flood authority, which is Shropshire Council, plus obviously Environmental Health and their petroleum officer. So these issues will be dealt with at a later stage, basically, because that will be very much part of the detailed design of how these elements were bunded and secured on site, so that there was no leakage, etc. So it's very much a technical process, that how they get to agreement on that, rather than necessarily a principle.
Thank you, Mike. Joyce.
Yeah, I just want to come back. Mile End roundabout in Oswestry has 4 roads going up. It's one of the busiest routes because it's the Welsh border and England, etc. There's a lot of traffic, and I relate this to that because, as you all know, the garage, all the traffic comes out of there, goes straight onto the roundabout, and there has not been an issue there that I'm aware of. So I struggle to find a problem with that roundabout as it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Vince?
Thanks, Chair. I accept that this is this is a difficult one. I do think that some of the points that have been raised and concerns actually are valid, but we have to deal with what is in front of us, and we are expected to take on the comments of our professional officers who have the skills and the software to do the relevant modelling and everything else. I think it could be better, but that's not what we've got in front of us, as I've just said. So we have to deal with what's the here and now. And I think, Mark has done his best to tell us that what we have is acceptable to the Highways Authority, to Shropshire Council Highways, and just about everybody else that has anything and knowledge to do with roads. So I certainly won't be voting against this based on, well, I guess, for want of a better word, amateurish or amateur opinions. And that doesn't mean to derogate my fellow councillors, because we do over the years see a number of these come in where, a bit of knowledge on the ground does concern you. But my experience equally over the years is that when we put that forward as a reason for refusal, inspectors take a dull view of the fact that we think we know best, because truthfully we don't. I've listened to the concerns about contamination and about flooding, and I think they've been dealt with in the report. So I suppose there could be a once in 100-year event based on now as opposed to 100 years ago. That's a possibility anywhere and everywhere. But I don't share those concerns that some other people have expressed as a result of that. As I say, we've got the local lead flood authority and the EA assessment. I'm also not taking into consideration anything to do with North West Relief Road, any more than I am about the potential for an alien invasion this evening, because one's definitely, almost certainly not going to happen, and the other one might not happen. And again, as I said at the beginning, we have to deal with what's in front of us and not what might be. That may or may not happen, and that will depend on the quality of the application when and if it comes before us. I'm not going to support saying no to this. I think that the developers have made changes, they've listened, they've understood why they have been refused before, and I think that they have amended it to make it acceptable. And in the last application, I think it's worth us remembering that the refusal was not based in any way, shape or form on Highways concerns. So to throw those in now just makes it seem as though we're determined that this application won't go through. So I will be supporting the officer's recommendation, but I appreciate that there has been a proposal that's not yet been seconded to reject it. And if that's the way members are minded to go, I certainly will be interested to hear what their reasons, which I'm sure Miranda will be demanding, are for that, because I don't think that we would be able to put sufficiently strong reasons together for a refusal in this instance. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that, Vince. Mark?
Yeah, I support the application. I think we are short of petrol stations and amenities like this. If you come from Oswestry, you've got the Nestcliff, and then this will be the next one on the left-hand side as you come in that way. After that, there'll be nothing on the left-hand side to the other side of Birmingham, if you go into Birmingham. I think there's going to be a big development next door as well, and they'll use the coffee shop and things like that. And I think there might be a little bit of problem with the park getting into there at some point in time. But if I'm right, I've queued many times trying to get on that roundabout from Shrewsbury, so that'll make the exit off the road easier to get into the petrol station for anybody coming that way. So I support it. So I'm happy to recommend following the proposal. Okay.
Yeah, we'll deal with what's in front of us first. Hang on that, I've got 2 or 3 in front of you, I'm afraid. Edward.
Thank you, Chair. question of clarification, really. So it was raised by Bicton Parish Council about this money contribution to the North West Relief Road. Because that's, so this application would set aside some money for that. If that relief road didn't go ahead and this application did, what would happen to that money? Where does that go to? That's the first question. I think I'll wait for the answer on that before I come to my second point.
Right, we'll just go to Mike Davies, please, about the monies, please.
Right, when the outline application was granted for the Sue West, there was a figure around, I think it was 8.2 million, which was allocated from the landowners at the time. There was about 6 landowners, who my recollection. Obviously, what's happened over a period of time, they've then disposed of that land to various developers. And this, because it's a full application, we've negotiated the 80,000 because that only covers half that site. The original site, I think the contribution was about 170,000 from this employment site towards that. So that's where the figure, if you like, comes from. So obviously, that's a contribution towards the North West Relief Road. So as such, it will be spent on the North West Relief Road. Now, if the North West Relief Road doesn't go ahead, then normally what would happen, it would be returned after a period of time, which would be wrote into the Section 106 agreement, or the unilateral undertaking. After that period of time, that money would then be returned to the applicant should the development not go ahead. And it'd probably be a 10-year period, something like that, we would insist on in the Section 106 agreement.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. I think if there is a money amount to be raised from the site for highways development and whatever from the town, that it shouldn't return to the applicant. It should go to other measures within the town and highways closed and need to be done. Just one point. Second one is the drainage. We are having quite a lot of drainage issues, and I share the concerns down this side of the table here. That and you said, I think, in your report, Mr. Davis, that these things will be dealt with after we've agreed this development. I'm so concerned about drainage. I would like to see those things actually written in or made clear now before I said yes to it in the first place. So is there any reassurance you can give me that? Because I come from a low-lying part of Shropshire, and drainage is a big issue, and I think this is important to look at.
I think it's a big concern for everyone across the country. I think the issue here is that obviously we're trying to approve something, and then to design something at the present when it's not been approved, it's almost that horse and cart scenario, because there's a cost associated with all that design work, and if it's supported, then that would obviously that is then looked at by technical experts, with that being our petroleum officer in regulatory services, obviously the local lead flood authority, the drainage people, and obviously the environment agency. So they will be looking at that. They would be consulted on that, and obviously that's what we've got in terms of those conditions to require additional information to be submitted.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. That leaves a concern of drainage to be addressed, I suspect, because I think our weather patterns are such that they're going to become more extreme and more variable. It seems that we're looking at now. So when those things do take place, and if we haven't got anything else built into this application to help mitigate against that, then obviously money has to be found at that time, and that's where's that going to come from to put those measures in place? That's a concern. So perhaps I finish by saying, could I have some reassurance that back to the original question about the money, if the North West Relief doesn't take place, could that money then be reallocated to something else within Shropshire Highways?
I'll come back to you, Mike Davis, please.
It's difficult. When we take a sum of money from a development, it needs to be justified, and the justification is that this benefits the North West Relief Road, that this development benefits the North West Relief Road and has an impact on the North West Relief Road as well. So that's what happened in terms of the Sue West master plan, and there was an apportionment of those costs towards the cost of the North West Relief Road. So if you think about it logically, to spend it on something else, it's got to be justified, and I think that's quite difficult to do that in this case.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Thank you. Philip, I have a couple more. Philip, you want to come in? Yes.
I just wanted to add, there'll be a section 106, if members are mindful to approve this application today, there'll be a section 106 agreement to be signed, and it will have to be set out in that what the monies have been spent on. So you couldn't, just because the relief road, in the event that relief road didn't get built, you couldn't just go and spend it somewhere else. It would have to be, we have to comply with the legal agreement that will be signed by the applicants, if you're mindful to support.
Thank you, Philip. Mike Isherwood.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just quickly in terms of the financial contribution, I'd have thought if that was going back to 2014, then surely the figure should be substantially higher now because of inflation, if nothing else. But leaving that aside, I also have concerns over the location of this because in the master plan, this is supposed to be a gateway site with, you know, words like distinctive, high quality, exciting attached to it, and all those different employment uses. But this is basically a roadside services. And I just don't think it's good enough for the site. I think too many of our Shropshire town gateways are have ended up being service stations, basically, and I wouldn't want to see another one here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Matt.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to come back on something that Councillor Hunt said. This committee is here to pass judgment on the applications in front of it, and insofar as it does, it can make its own mistakes. I am fully aware that there are financial consequences for when during the appeals process that perhaps this committee might make a decision that ultimately an inspector doesn't like, but that nonetheless this is the process that we have, and we should be allowed to do so. We should be allowed to say what we want to say on these matters. Simply saying that just because officers have decided one thing is not that we are somehow we just have to follow it simply because the officers said so. I'm afraid no. With all due respect, we are here to make our own minds up on the information that is presented to us by both the applicant and the officers who are looking at it. And I'm afraid I can't agree with what Councillor Hunt has just said about us, particularly when making some disparaging comments about amateurism. So, thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dan. Okay. We have a proposal on the table. Oh, sorry, Philip.
No, I haven't got that.
Okay, anybody wants, Mark, anything more to say? No? Mike?
Could my point about the £80,000 and inflation and the fact that it was set in 2014, could someone come back on that?
Yes, it was, and I did ask the same question myself at the time because I said it's index linked. So I spoke to the project team in relation to North West Relief Road, and it's set in stone, unfortunately. So I don't disagree with what you're saying, but those are the figures, and they were wrote into the Section 106 agreement, which was granted back in 2014. So not a lot we can do on the back of that, unfortunately.
Thank you. Okay, I have a proposal on the table. Let's take advice. I've started off this week.
It's got two,
Right, we've got two proposals, one for, one against.
No second.
No seconded yet. So, choice.
I will second for.
Right, thank you. Mark proposed it, you seconded it. Do I have any other proposals?
We'll take that one first.
We'll take that one first, okay? That's the easiest way of doing it.
We have to take the one that's been first proposed and seconded.
Yes.
Or anything else.
Yes. Please.
Okay. That's my list.
Okay. Roll call vote on it, is that
We've seen the second of the second proposal, Stuart.
Sorry?
We've seen the second of my proposal.
We haven't got a second, no.
So you want to second it?
Yeah, I'll second.
Nobody actually did, but
It's a straight vote.
it's a straight vote, so
Yeah.
we'll do
Right,
this.
second, wasn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Which is, yeah,
It's not a straight vote.
it's not a straight vote. Yes, go on, please.
Through you, Chair, for clarity, you take the proposal first, that's been the first proposal to be proposed and seconded, which we now have. It isn't a straight vote. If that proposal falls, then you'd have to seek to consider another proposal. It wouldn't simply be an either or vote, if that makes sense to members. Just before we, through you, if I may, before we put this to the vote, so far as the proposed reasons for the second proposal are concerned, then we would need to address those, because I would simply advise members that highways matters are technical matters. Yes, councillors are entirely right that you can come to your own conclusions, but you do need evidence for those conclusions where there are technical matters. The evidence before you has been outlined by the highways officer and in the planning officer's report. So there would need to be some further explanation of the evidence that you are drawing on to take a different view to that technical evidence that is before you. But just at the moment we have a proposal and a second that has been seconded to put to members. Is that okay?
That's correct, yeah.
So it's a roll call vote, members, and I will ask you if you are for or against, or of course you may abstain. Councillor Barrow.
For.
Councillor Birchett.
Against.
Councillor Elner.
For.
Councillor Clark.
Against?
Councillor Green.
Against.
Councillor Hunt.
For.
Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Isherwood.
Against.
Councillor Towers.
Against.
Councillor Rasma.
Against.
Councillor Wynne.
For.
Chair, that is 5, 4 and 6 against. I make it, therefore that has fallen.
Okay. So now, as our advice was given, we need some more planning reasons. Do we? Yes, it has been seconded by several. Let's go with David.
Okay.
So Miranda, can I just hand over to you to explain again, please?
Well, we have a proposal which is against the officer recommendation. So before that's put to the vote, we do need to understand for the members voting what those reasons are for that proposed refusal.
If I may, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Main reasons, as already mentioned, are the traffic flow. Yes, I understand that highways and national highways take account of traffic flow, but we all live around Shrewsbury and we all have the same problems at all these roundabouts every single day. If you've got the right time of day, you get the right traffic flow. If you've got the wrong time of day, you get the wrong traffic flow. So my original reason for refusal was access to the site across a busy road, poor traffic flow, and the fact that the majority of traffic coming to and from the site will be from the A5 trunk road, not the Welsh Quill road. Councillor Jones mentioned the fact that it's the first petrol station after Nestcliff with a left-hand turning. The next petrol station, 3 miles down the road, next service station, has got roundabout access from every direction. It was built for that purpose. Further down the road, Eurogarage, another 2 miles down the road, Eurogarage built a further service station, which is literally a quarter mile in off the main roundabout on the edge of Shrewsbury. We managed for 26 years to have one service station from Wolverhampton all the way to Oswestry. Now all of a sudden we need 4. So the fact that it's a left turn, easy access to a petrol station is not a material consideration. So our original point, it's all about traffic flow and it's all about understanding the traffic flow across the whole of the estate. That's my reasons.
We should ask the comments.
Can I go to planning officers to see if those reasons are strong enough? Philip, Mike?
You confident?
I think obviously from the Highways England and our Highways Authority have not supported those. But equally, I'm certainly aware that we've had refusals in the past where officers have gone against officer recommendations, and they have been supported on appeal. So my view is I think we will struggle on this one, but if members feel that strongly about it, then we'll have to try and defend it.
Mr. Chairman, can I get one point?
Time that we come around and back in situ, please.
It's too messy. There's things on touting us. Too many messy things.
Must be a lot more floors.
Yeah. Well, can this procedure start to come? Yeah. Right, Mr. Chair.
Oh, sorry, Philip. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This has been an interesting debate, and there has been some interesting points raised. I think the highway grounds are not strong. However, I'm not saying it's completely undefendable. We can defend, but you are putting yourselves at risk of potential costs. However, something else was brought up in the debate, which I found very interesting, was the Section 106 from 2014 being index linked. And I feel, is that also an issue that you want to raise? Because obviously there's been, as we all know, hyperinflation since then. And it seems to me this is a very poor amount of money to be towards the North West Relief should it go ahead. And further still, you would need the Section 106, as I touched on earlier, to say if the North West Relief wasn't rebuilt, if it was to be spent on something else. So I feel there are a number of loose ends with this application. It's not the strongest, but it is evenly balanced as far as the access is concerned. So I'm not going to say at officer level we're prepared to defer this application for further consideration. I feel there are some issues being raised, and that I consider do need further consideration.
Thank you, Philip. There's a couple of points further on Mike's points which you would like to take on, would you?
Yes, please.
Right.
Yeah, it goes against the SANDEV policies S16.1B.
Thank you. Anything else from anybody? David?
I just raised the issue of footway provision and whether this is compliant with LTM 120, whether we ought to be, given that that's the policy of the council, and whether we ought to be asking for that to be looked at.
Okay, thank you. We'll take that on board. Anything from that?
Just remind me, how many staff was it meant to employ? 21, and they're all arriving how?
In a car.
Yeah, but they won't all give that together.
Full-time equivalent.
All by car.
Full-time equivalent, full-time, yeah.
Is there sufficient parking for the staff parking to allow for that?
Yes.
They're good, but not be there. It's a 24-hour service, as I presume, so it'll get down to 12 more 12-hour shifts. Yeah, still 12 cars. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I did that. Right.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Gary.
So, Mr. Chairman, thank you. In the past, on the previous application for the Aldi site and Battlefield, we made a suggestion that the planner took on board and they've changed the site totally and it's made it much more accessible. And the suggestion was, and I think Councillor Ishmael mentioned it, was the slip road off the northern side of the A5 into the site and exit only onto Oswestry Road. Now, we're not here to rewrite people's plans, but we mentioned that last time and the nobody took it on board. So perhaps there may be a small option to defer, to look at the section 106 increases and suggest the developer has a quick look at the plans. Because the slip road off the A5 will make the site accessible in all traffic conditions.
So to claim concern for Labour 24, what would you think of that? Defer?
Yeah.
With that in mind.
Yes, I understand where you're coming from. I think Councillor Vasquez just touched on the football. That was another thing I was thinking of when I said it isn't. There's too many loose ends, if you like, that need tying up. So yes, if we can consider a deferral. But I did ask the case officer about that half an hour before you come through anyway, because I was leaning towards that. But you didn't think they would entertain deferral?
I think the issue with this is that there was I go back to the master plan. There was definitely a view about what was expected there, and I think that there's a genuine. Does this really tick the boxes? And I've had quite a debate in my own mind about this, but also I'm very much aware of the market conditions have changed in the last couple of years, not last 2 or 3 years, and things are very different from probably what they were in 2020. But I take on board what you're saying in relation to the highways issue, but I suspect that there's also a bit, I suppose, a disappointment in terms of what's actually come forward when what was actually envisaged originally.
Did they pay £1 fee for this application? Because they can have a free go.
So that would be a free go.
There's a third go. They wouldn't have a free go a third time. They have a free go a second time. Did they pay a fee because this isn't putting it? Can they each be put that? We're looking at the procedure with regards to a free go. One thing I also need to touch on, did somebody mention a slip road off the...
Yes.
I doubt if that would get support from National Highways.
I don't know that, but that's that would be a consideration as well.
Did it free go?
No, but he's not certain. I think they paid for this because I think it's a smaller site and they don't have the free go on the previous one that was withdrawn.
So where are we at?
What I'm looking at is what I'm trying to put myself in the applicant's eyes now. What will they do? Because obviously they have the right to go to appeal, or if they've only paid a planning fee for this application, they have a free go. Now my honest opinion on here would be, if I was the agent, I'd be using the free go up. Because you've raised a number of issues today. It isn't just highways, is it? There's a number of other smaller issues which combine together, coupled with the policy issues, that makes this that I don't think I've got strong enough grounds to say we can't agree to defer.
Okay, I'm coming back to Gary now, who's the proposer.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to withdraw my objection and insert a deferral request instead, if my second is happy to.
Okay.
For the reasons as outlined by the rest of the committee.
Move a show of hands for all those in favour. Would that be all right?
If you wish, Chair, I can take a roll call.
Can we have a show of hands, all those in favour of deferral?
Okay.
A point of
Oh,
clarity.
sorry.
Can I ask a point of clarity? We may be deferring this for it to come back and exactly the same thing happen. Because I think the points that were raised, while some of them may be answered, like the monies, I think the people that have spoken against it will still have the same reasons for refusing it.
Yeah.
So is there any point in deferring it if you're going to get the same result? Just a point of clarity, and I'd be grateful for officer opinion on that.
Thank you. Could Yes. I hear what you're saying, Joyce.
Yeah.
But maybe they'll come back with a different plan, they can, because that's why the reason for the deferral.
I think deferral is a reasonable suggestion, and we can, if they decide they don't wish to change anything, we'll come back to committee next month, and you can decide one way or the other.
Okay. Edward.
And does that deferral allow for a review of the costs? Because you said it was fixed by some agreement. Is there any chance that that could be changed in this discussion?
Reasons for deferral.
That is a reason for deferral. It's for them to take on board what you've brought to our attention today, and to see will they take any of those issues on board, and then if they don't, will it come back to you next month, and you can make a decision one way or the other.
So, do you possibly have a roll call then? Do a roll call then. For deferral. Or a deferral being proposed in second.
Is everyone clear of the proposal? Because it's been the deferral for the reasons and concerns set out by the committee. So we'll take a roll call vote for or against the deferral. So, sorry. Councillor Barron. For. Okay. Councillor Birchett.
For.
Councillor Elner.
For.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Green.
For.
Councillor Hunt.
For.
Councillor Jones.
For.
Councillor Isherwood.
For.
Councillor Towers.
For.
Councillor Vasmer.
For.
Councillor Wynne.
For.
It's unanimous, Chair.
So that is deferred. Thanks very much. Good debate. That's right. Right, so thanks, Mark. Item 6, Hawthorne, Paddock, Welshhampton. Well, okay, so who's presenting next? John. Oh, John, sorry. Yeah, thank you, John.
Yes, this is the this application seeks planning permission. So permanent adjacent traffic pitch following the previous temporary approval for 1 year at the site. The site is actually Hawthorne, Paddock, Welshhampton. The pitch will comprise one static caravan, one touring caravan, one amenity block, storage shelter, and a driveway. Before I go further, I would refer members to the update sheet. Since the publication of the report, a total of 5 people have submitted comments, all of which object to the recommendation by officers. The comments are summarised on the update sheet, below each summary are the officers' responses to those objections. A further update not recorded relates to an error in the first paragraph of the report. The expiry of the temporary permission on this site should read as the 23rd of December 22, not the 23rd of December 21. The application has been referred to the committee as the planning officer is recommending approval, contrary to the opinion of the local member and the parish council, who provides material reasons for their objections. And go to the slides. So the site is in open countryside, approximately 300 metres north to the edge of the settlement of Welshhampton. If you look to the next one. Look at the bottom right of this this plan. That is effectively the edge of the settlements protruding there. The nearest dwelling to the site, marked in red, and go back to the location here. Nearest dwellings are the Grade 2 listed Hampton House Farm, which is 80 metres through the cursor on the left, and to the west, and the Hawthorne House, 120 metres to the east, the cursor is there. The wider site, outlined in blue, is comprised of a large paddock with an access gate, track, and a hard standing where the caravan and the pitch is set. The access is by a single lane, unclassified road, which is just to the right of the blue there, which is also a public footpath. There is currently a static caravan, amenity block, timber shelter, and shed on site, which were allowed to be retained following last year's temporary approval. And this is the proposed block plan. The static caravan, which is on site at the moment, where that cursor is, that will be moved to the east of the site, with the cursor is there. That will be replaced by a larger permanent amenity block. Go back to the which is just there. The amenity block would replace the small block that's there at the moment. We'll provide a day room for the family and a space for cooking and washing. The amended block plan, as you can see, shows proposed hedge and tree planting to the southern and eastern boundaries, along with post and rail fencing around the entirety of the pitch. So I'd just like to say at this point, I'd like to summarise why the location is considered acceptable. I appreciate there's been 3 previous applications at this site. 2 were refused and 1 last year was a grant of a year's temporary permission. Last time around, the case officer concluded that the scheme would represent isolated development. Since that decision, an appeal has been recently allowed at Foregate Stables, Coton, which is near Telstock, not far from the church. The appeal there allowed the permanent stationing of caravans for residential purposes with Gypsy family. The appeal site and this site bear significant similarities in relation to their accessibility to nearby settlements, and as such, that appeal decision is deemed to be an important material consideration. This application site is detached from Welchampton, as you can see. However, policy CS12 of the core strategy supports gypsy and traveller sites close to settlements. Close to is not defined in the policy, though it is considered appropriate that a site with reasonable accessibility to services would meet this test. Welchampton has a bus service, public house and school, all of which are a 2-minute drive from the site. The broader range of facilities, including secondary schools, supermarkets and health services, are located in Ellesmere, which is just 7 minutes away by car. The short drive times from the development to the nearest settlements and community facilities are following on from the inspector's decision, the recent appeal decision I earlier referenced. It is concluded that this site will not be unduly isolated. I shall go on to the next slide, Philip. Next slide. So these pictures of the static caravan on site at the moment. This will be retained, but moved to the eastern side of the site. Bottom right is the sheds where the borehole pump is located. Next slide. This is the new amenity block proposed. Simple design, timber clad. Next one. This is the floor plan. Obviously larger scale than the current amenity block that was allowed last year. This is considered to be a much improved facility and allow permanent occupation. You'll see to the top left a children's store and medical supplies and oxygen. I'll briefly touch on that later on towards the end of the presentation. Next slide. So this is the access to the site. On the right, which is a tad closer, the existing static caravan you can see, and the amenity block which would be removed, which is just behind the caravan. Next one. So this is obviously now up to the site itself. These pictures show the static caravan to the left, the touring caravan, which is just visible in the middle picture, on the left side of that middle picture. On the right is the sheds where the borehole pump is located. And then on the right picture, to the right, is you can see the timber shelter just behind the static caravan, which was originally used for horses, but is being currently used for store toys, bikes, and other items relating to the family's occupation of this site. Next one. These pictures show how the site appears in the wider landscape. The top left is from Copes Lane, and as you approach the site, the listed Hampton House Farm is to the left in that shot. The photos to the right side of this slide is taken from the driveway leading up to that listed building. The small white speck, it's very hard to see in the hedgerow. The right picture, Phil, the right.
Where no?
It's in the hedgerow, go down. Just there. Very small little white speck, that is the caravan in its current position. Obviously, as I say, it will be moved to the eastern side, so on that entrance to the listed building, the visibility will be fairly reduced. And the bottom left photograph is taken from the site itself. The land just gently rises up to the pitch, and that's looking down to the east towards Hawthorne House, which is approximately 120 metres to the east. It is accepted that there will be some visual and landscape harm. There will be some views because it is on high ground to the south and southeast. However, as already stated, it is considered that the site is in a suitable location for a gypsy and traveller pitch. Would be in accordance with policy CS12, the MPPF, and the PPTS, the government's planning policy for traveller sites. Other factors to be considered are the fact that though our planning policy team are confirmed that there is not a level of unmet needs for gypsy sites across Shropshire that would require new allocations, such as another park hall, for example, it is the case that the council must support the government's aim of providing more private gypsy and traveller sites regardless of the need and supply situation. Furthermore, and this has been confirmed by the gypsy liaison officer, the council are unable to provide this family any alternative sites. Finally, personal circumstances, including the best interests of children at the site, have been established, with two of the family's children now settled in a local school, while the youngest child currently suffers from serious health conditions, and it is considered that a settled permanent base with improved facilities will be more suitable. Therefore, notwithstanding the visual harm identified, it is concluded that on balance, the permanent residential occupation of the site would comply with policy CS5, CS12, the PPTS, the MPPF, and as such the application is recommended for approval subject to conditions listed in Appendix 1 of the report.
Thank you, John. Yes, Philip?
I'd like to just add, for the benefit of the public sitting here today, members have made a visit to this site this morning, had an extensive look around, and took particular note of the boundary, which you noticed in the presentation was currently cladding. However, there has been young hedge plants planted there in order to integrate the development into the surrounding countryside, if members are mindful to support the application. Thank you.
I would add one final matter, the fence that you would have seen today, it's been made clear to the agents that that is not acceptable long term. It will be conditioned so that we have a post and rail fence going around that pitch. I fully accept concern raised by members of the public that that fence is not in keeping with that site.
Thank you, John. We have 3 speakers on this application. So to start, we have against Councillor Mike Hinsdale. Would you like to come forward from Welshhampton and Lineal Parish Council? Right, you have 3 minutes. Would you like to third step in the morning?
Yes, please.
Okay, no problem. You start the clock when you start speaking. Right hand on top button.
So the timing of this meeting did not allow the Welshhampton and Lineal Parish Council to meet to discuss, though our Parish Council's comprehensive objection was submitted previously. I must begin by informing this committee that residents advised me just this morning that their recent letters of objection submitted to Mr John Shaw has been completely suppressed and altered by him. Residents' alleged letters have been reduced by a major extent, not redacted, but content completely deleted. I have reported this to Miss Tracy Dart and asked for this item to be removed from the agenda pending investigation, but I have been refused. So I can only ask the committee to consider whether you are being fully informed by the evidence in the planning officer's submission. My objection today, because we haven't met, is based on the representations I've received directly from residents. And if you check it out, you'll see there are many. If you attended this morning's site visit, you saw a significant development in open countryside in an agricultural field, clearly demonstrating the applicant has not, nor ever intended to comply with the rules, regulations and policies that the rest of our society are obliged to follow. Yet this planning office is prepared to flout those policies, tear up all the rules and regulations and recommend grant permission. After the last hearing with this case, the previous recommendation of grant permission for temporary occupation with conditions that included they must leave in 12 months was issued. Now the planning department recommend completely overturning that recommendation, disrespecting the conditions and directions of this committee, which you voted for by 10-1. The planning officer chooses to adopt the applicant agent's testament in which we, the residents of Welshampton, do not recognise any substance. We assure you it would not stand up to scrutiny. For example, as has been mentioned, the medical resources so needed by this family are more abundant and closer in travel time to the Parkhall site than they are to Welshampton, contrary to their claim. The residents of our parish and wider in Shropshire are angered, dismayed and offended by this planning officer's decision, by which you forfeit their trust, confidence and respect for your authority. Today, this committee, representatives of the electorate,
30 seconds.
have the opportunity to remedy and reject this offensive recommendation. What could possibly have changed so much in 1 year that your previous strong and considered direction should be so disregarded by the planning office and abandoned? I have nothing more to say.
Thank you very much, Mike. Okay, now we have the local member. Mr. Brian Williams, Councillor Brian Williams. Brian, you have 5 minutes, as you well know. Would you like a 30-second warning?
No, I'd like a minute warning.
Okay.
Before you start to time me, Chairman, can I simply ask who the officer is who has joined the committee and his position? Because every other officer introduced himself. And I wondered why we had an additional officer for this.
All right, it's not for this actually.
Right, Kelvin Hall, Principal Planning Officer. Thank you for that.
Okay.
Okay, are we ready to go?
Yep.
Right. Now, members, I want to address 2 or 3 salient points. First of all, that no pictures are available on the Park Hall site. I spoke to the Gypsy Liaison Officer 3 or 4 days ago, and I'm assured that there are half a dozen pictures available at our alternative site at Craven Arms. Now, there is nothing in the legislation that says that a traveller family have to be accommodated on the nearest site, and in fact, in terms, they are travellers, so why can they not be located at Craven Arms as easily as they could if there were a site at Park Hall? Second point that I wish to make is related to the fact that the planning officers are relying on the circumstance that the children attend school in Welshampton. Well, you will all know that when any member of the community has to change jobs and go somewhere else, another city, another town, for a job, they take their family with them. They take the children with them, and the children are located in the local school there. If this family were located at Craven Arms, then plainly the children would be found a place in the school at Craven Arms. So I see no logic in the supposition that because the children are in the school at Welshampton, that should mean that the family cannot be moved. I then want to move to the situation where it is said that this application, if you approve it, will not set a precedent. I'd like you to look at, on my page 41 of my written report, the planning officer says, similarly, concerns that approval of the application could set a precedent is not a material planning consideration and carries no weight in the determinant of the application. If you turn to the previous page, however, the planning officer refers to the site at Coton Hall and says in this respect, the assessment of reasonable accessibility applied by the inspector would appear to similarly apply to the site of Welshampton. So if one site, if they're giving authority to this site doesn't set a precedent, how come that the fact that the inspector gave authority for the Coton Hall site sets a precedent for this one? You can't have precedents both ways. And I suggest to you that this does set a precedent. And if any of you have a spare field in your division, be aware that this site, if given permission, will be quoted as a precedent. And if it's not quoted as a precedent by our officers, believe me, it will be quoted as a precedent
by the solicitors and land agents acting for gypsies on that occasion. Be in no doubt that if this site is given the permission, it will be a precedent for development on any field, any empty field in any of your areas. There is a concern that residents' opinions and objections have not been accurately communicated to the committee. And my colleague from the parish council has referred to this. And there is a very real feeling that the evidence submitted
1 minute left
has been changed. So there is a feeling among the residents that the gypsy applicants are being treated more beneficially than ordinary residents and concerned taxpayers in the area. There is a pro-prejudicial towards one section of the community as distinct from what we might call ordinary residents. Can I suggest to you, you have good reason to refuse this site as being development in the open countryside, contrary to policy CS5, and is stated previously, which you will find that statement in 6.1.18. And it was also stated in when we returned the application last year. This is developed in the open countryside, plain and simple, and that is a good reason why you are able to turn it down. Thank you.
4 seconds over. I'll let you off.
Oh.
Thank you. Philip, you'd like to come in before the next speaker?
Yes, please. Now because time's over. I'll touch on procedural issues, and then John would like to touch on 1 or 2 application issues raised. First of all, the update sheet. A number of letters of objections have been received, and they are each one commented on this update sheet. The purpose of the update sheet is not to regurgitate the report, it's to raise any new issues raised. And to be fair to the officer, he has actually commented on each individual letter. There's not many officers go to that extreme length. So therefore, I cannot agree with what's been raised with regards issues raised in with regards letters of objections. These letters will be on the website for public viewing. It just so happens they've come in recently, and we're not electric. We have staff in place who will ensure that they are on the website for public viewing. There's an email come through which I'm waiting to have a look at now before. Read down there.
The comment's been, my objection's been summarised. That's placed on receipt. Okay.
Shall we go to the next speaker and then come back on anything like that, John?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Next minute or two to read that. Okay. So can we have the final speaker, Trevor Merrill, please? Agent. Trevor, you have 3 minutes. You know what I'm saying?
I do. My apologies.
Okay. Would you like a 30-second warning?
Yes, please.
Okay.
No, you're going too quick. One you go.
We on?
Yeah, you're on.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Chair and members. My name is Trevor Mendel, and I am the planning agent acting on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Dolan, the applicants regarding the site in question. A planning application for Barbara and James Dolan and their then 3 children was presented to committee some 12 months ago, where a temporary 12-month permission was granted. During this time, contact has been made between the Dolans and the council's Gypsy and Traveller liaison team, and they have confirmed there are no alternative council or private family sites within the geographical area, which includes Parkhall and Craven Arms. The family now have 4 children, 2 of which attend the local school, who are doing well with excellent attendance records. Barbara has just gone through a traumatic experience giving premature birth to the couple's 4th child, who has serious health conditions.
The family have now been settled on site within the village for some 3 years, and in that time made friends with the locals and the immediate neighbours. James is hardworking and just wants a normal settled life for him, his wife and 4 children, mainly providing the children with the opportunity of proper health and education, to which James and Barbara were never afforded. The Gypsy traveller status will remain as part of their ethnic culture and way of life. There is a misconception about travellers, mainly portrayed by the media. This site has been well managed by the family over its time of occupation. The site has electric, water and its own sewage treatment tank, and the family pay the council tax in the same way as each of us. The family are registered with Churchmere Medical Group, and the site has its own postal address. I am aware members paid a visit to the site earlier today, and should planning permission be granted on a permanent basis for the scheme before them, James and Barbara have funding to establish the site in a more suitable form. It was noted there were some principal concerns of the parish council, where many of the points raised have now been dealt with within the documents submitted during the application process. Together with this, the thorough report that has been presented to members by Case Officer John Shaw has confirmed and further clarified these issues. Overall, it has been established that there is an absence of alternative sites, while the personal circumstances of the Durham family weigh heavily in favour of allowing a settled base for the family. Furthermore, approving this family pitch would accord with paragraph 24 of the planning policy for traveller sites,
30 seconds,
the Housing and Planning Act and the National Planning Policy Framework, which have the aim of providing more gypsy and traveller sites. So it is at this point I request the committee take all matters into consideration and approve this planning application. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Trevor. Okay, would you like to come back, John? Or Philip, whichever. Yep, okay, Philip.
Right. First of all, yes, one of our directors had an email, to be fair, that was delayed out, from a member of the public who is complaining that they haven't had their letter read out before today. The procedure is members of the public have 21 days in which to put comments into applications. We do accept ones that come in after 21 days. They are referred to in the report. The point of the update sheet is to bring new issues raised to your attention. It's not a forum in which people have the right to put in a letter and speak against or for an application. The public have the right to appoint somebody to speak on their behalf, as you've heard on many applications, in either support or against. And the final thing I want to touch on before I hand over to John is a comment by the local member. Yes, he's quite right, the site is open countryside, and policy allows travelling people to have a pitch in open countryside. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Yeah, I'll just pick on a few points raised. Regards to the update sheets, as Philip touched upon, the objections that have been received have been fully summarised. This is standards. If you look at the main body of the report, you've received 19 objections. They've been summarised. There's been no comment past on that. Obviously, we will not copy and paste every single letter, no matter how long. You can imagine how long this would be. Being fully summarised, the common letters are public. The ones that have been received in the last 24 hours will become public, if not already. I've then provided detailed comments rebutting those concerns, most of which are a repeat of what we've already received. So that's in terms of the procedural matters. That was what Phil has touched upon. In terms of the development in the open countryside, as Phil said, policy CS12 does allow gypsy and traveller sites to be in the open countryside. There's obviously an expectation that such sites would be in the open countryside. By the very nature of the culture of gypsy and travellers, it would not be within a built-up urban area in the main. So we have policy to allow for that, as long as the site is accessible to local facilities and settlements. The judgment in this case is that this is close enough to local settlements and facilities to be suitable. If it was more remote, if it was miles from anywhere, then we could look again and say the site is too far removed from local facilities. Even for a gypsy site, it should be refused, but this is not. It's a 2-minute drive from the local school, for example, a 7-minute drive from Ellesmere, but the full range of facilities that they have there. I would also point out that there are other policies allowing limited land in the open countryside, not just for gypsy and travellers. Farm workers' dwellings, affordable exception sites, these sort of things. So it's not just a case of preferential treatment. We do have policies that allow for this. In terms of setting a precedent, the reference to the appeal, that is not a case of one appeal has been allowed, we must allow all gypsy sites anywhere. The emphasis of that appeal is that that site was in close proximity to Tilstock, Police, Whitchurch, well connected to the road network, and that relates to this site. Now that's not the only consideration. There are other matters to consider: landscape impacts, drainage, all of that, other things that people might be concerned about. But in terms of accessibility, the principle, the officer recommends approval, or recommends the principle is acceptable. Then we move to the other matters to consider, such as heritage impacts, landscape impacts, ecology impacts, and so forth. Clearly, if we had other applications on this site, and this is pure speculation because we're dealing with one gypsy and chocolate pitch today, not 10, not 5, whatever, we're dealing with one. If we had more, then we would have a few. We would have another meeting like this, and a different decision could be made. But today we are looking at one gypsy travellers pitch, and I don't think this sets a precedence. We must consider only what we can see in front of us today. Yeah, I think that's probably most of the points I've not noted down.
Thank you, John. Right, on to the floor. I've had 2 indicated already, 3 now. So we'll kick off with Mike.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say that I think the officer has done an excellent job on this report. It's obviously a difficult, slightly controversial application. I think the report is detailed. It covers everything that we could be concerned about. And I would just like to move the recommendations in the report.
Thank you, Mike. Jeff.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask for my education, what's changed since the last time? There was 3 applications, 2 were turned down. Last time I was party to that, and we said you could have an extra year to enable you to find somewhere else to live. So it's policy change. I can't see why it's acceptable now in planning terms, but it wasn't acceptable before. So what's changed? Is the layout of the site changed? Have the rules changed? Or what? I haven't got a problem with this, by the way. I'm not being critical. I just don't understand what has changed. I would like to suggest that I'm not entirely sure about permanent residency. I wouldn't mind doing 5 or 6 years, but we can't change the application, because I do think the family needs somewhere to live. They are part of the community, and they've got a right to be a part of that community. But I do have concerns, and the concern I do have is conditions, what controls we can put on to make sure the site doesn't grow and all of a sudden become twice as big. So there's 3 or 4 questions there I'd like answers to, please.
Sorry, can we have those answered now?
Yeah,
just a clarification. Thank you, John.
Yeah, in terms of the last point you raised, conditions have been put on. So this is a personal permission to the family there. So that would be limited to them. Only that family could live on that site. And the condition stating only 1 pitch as well. So as far as we are concerned, that is sufficient control to prevent additional pitches or other people. And yeah, those conditions are there in the appendix 1. In terms of what has changed, there's a few matters. Last time I understand this came to committee, there was a suggestion that there was availability of park hall, but the sites the pitches have been vandalised.
Yeah, I'm aware of that.
So Gypsy Liaison officers confirmed there are no pitches available at Park Hall. In fact, there's a waiting list there now. Craven Arms is not within the geographical remit of this family, and it is also very unsuitable for in terms of there's territorial aspects in terms of allocating in terms of gypsy sites, and we have to consider the welfare of the family and the children going onto that site where they may not be particularly welcomed if there was availability. Park Hall site is not available, and there's a waiting list for people who have established a need to go onto that site. And the other matter is the local connection has become more entrenched since last time. There's been an additional member of the family born who's very unwell, needs a permanent settled base. That was not the case last time. The children have had another year in school, they're very settled there as well. And the third matter is the appeal I referenced. That, again, the appeal does not determine this application must be approved, but it is material to say it establishes parameters of what is accessibility for a gypsy site to settlements. The inspector made it very clear that that site was close enough to local settlements to be regarded as accessible for as a gypsy site. This is close enough to Welshampton Ellesmere. We didn't have that information a year ago. We do have that appeal. If we refuse it, I would fear that we go to appeal again and we may not be successful. So.
Thank you for explaining that. Thank you.
Thank you, John. A valid point. I thought I'd read all the report. I didn't pick up this is just for the family. It cannot be moved on or sold to anybody else.
Yeah, it's in the condition.
Yeah. So I missed that one. Thank you, Vince.
Thanks, Chair. I'm not going to say an awful lot on this. I mean, in the old days, we used to undertake gypsy and traveller training. I don't know if we still do it anymore, but I think I did it in the first 2 terms. Well, once in each term, and it does give you an insight into their culture and perhaps more importantly, their rights within planning, which are not the same as the rest of the community. It's as simple as that. You know, and there you can have a whole debate as to whether they should be or they shouldn't be. It's not relevant. I like this site. I think John's written a very good report as well. I think some of the criticisms that were laid at his door perhaps a little bit unfair, but there you go. I'm quite happy to second this and wish the family, should it be approved, all the best.
Thank you, Vince. David, did you indicate? I think, I'm not sure.
Yes, yes, I did.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I just want to say, just briefly, I support the officer's recommendation. I think the report's really excellent. It goes into a lot of detail, and I think the mention was made earlier of being prejudicial approach. I think totally reject that, and I think I think the report is excellent, and we should back the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, David. Joyce?
Just a quick question. I think I know the answer anyway, because you can see they appear to be a very nice family. Have there been any complaints from neighbours in the time that they've been there? Have there been any issues or problems? Thank you.
Yeah, I suppose Gypsy Ladies officer quite a few times, and no complaints that we're aware of have been raised.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. So I think, Mark.
Yeah, I support it too, only that obviously there's quite a decent field that they own another sort of about 1.5 acres, 2 acres. I presume we can put a condition, there's no other building to be put on that field of any set of anything.
The rest of the land in blue is agricultural. It requires change of use. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Edward.
Yeah, I thought about this last time as well. And, yeah, I think a lot of the heat in this particular debate is because people bought a site, moved onto the site, and then went for retrospective. And I think that is a really regrettable thing to do. And I think the feeling that any one of us could do that is a flag planning policy and law is not healthy, not good. We do need to make that point. I think I certainly want to make it. I think if any of us were to get a different job, we'd have to move our families elsewhere. You know, I taught in the south of the county. Craven Arms is a perfectly acceptable place to go to. We look after their children. I taught them, so not a problem either. On this particular specific, I suppose you say one static van. What happens when this family grows? Can they have 2 vans or 3 vans on the same site? Is there a potential for growth there? It's the precedent, I think, if we do allow it. Could you perhaps answer that for me?
Thank you, Edward. Yeah, as Vince alluded to, that there are special laws and planning laws for gypsy families.
It's saying just one van. That one, whether
that is where it will stay. Future will not see growth in that situation.
In the same family, that's what you're talking about.
They can
single pitch.
I'd like to draw your attention, Councillor, to condition number 6 as in the draft conditions suggested by the case officer. But at the end of the day, this site is restricted to one family.
Family.
Yeah, one family.
How big's the family?
So I think Edward was asking whether another caravan in years to come.
The condition says here no more than 2 caravans. Therefore, if they wanted another caravan, they'd have to apply. However, we'd have to look at that at this time, at the time of the application. Like, for example, now this application has changed in circumstances since it came before you 12 months ago. You're quite right about retrospective nature. I suspect it has understandably upset local people, yes, because it is retrospective. However, the law does allow retrospective applications. And one of the key issues here is the change in stance from the council's gypsy liaison officer. He's made it very clear there is not a site available. Therefore, if this application gets refused today, they end up on the road. We haven't got a site in North Shropshire suitable to put them on. The fact is, before, the Parkhall site needed money spending on it. There's obviously things being done there, and times have moved on since this application was last at committee.
Understood. Why North Shropshire only? Why not the whole of the county? The liaison officer made it very clear that the family would not be suitable to move to Great Arms. Would not be suitable for them to move there, even if there was availability. There's a lot of, obviously, there's an aspect of issues. Health issues with the child. But primarily, this site is recommended for approval because we need permanent base and settling there now. Children in that school, and for the youngest child has serious health issues. If we were to refuse and to enforce their movements, we were potentially looking at roadside existence for a temporary period of time, which is clearly not suitable for the family. In terms of the amount of caravans, as I say, Phil mentioned condition 6, that limits the amount of caravans on this pitch. I don't know if there's any other points that we raised.
No, I've covered them.
That covers pretty. Yes, Joyce.
Yeah, very, very quickly. I do feel this is a fait accompli because we are where we are now. I think it shows the importance of enforcement and enforcement officers, because I had something similar starting to happen on my own patch. Unfortunately, officers were very quick off the mark, as were residents, to tell me what was going on. But given that we are where we are, I'd like to move the officer recommendations for approval on this.
It's already been done and seconded.
I missed that one.
I second.
Oh, sorry. Okay, missed that. Sorry. I'm showing growth to the conversation, Chair.
That's okay.
It was about an hour ago, to be fair.
Very quickly, I just want to draw committee's attention to the excellent report by the Gypsy Liaison Officer, and it should be read very carefully, particularly considering the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Act 2022 and the effect thereof. Thank you.
Thank you, Nat. Okay, I think we've come to a vote. Roll call vote.
Thank you, Chair. So the proposal is as per the officer recommendation. Councillor Barrow?
For.
Councillor Birchip?
Abstain.
Councillor Elner?
For.
Councillor Clark?
For.
Councillor Green?
For.
Councillor Hunt?
For.
Councillor Jones?
For.
Councillor Isherwood?
For.
Councillor Towers?
Abstain.
Councillor Vasner?
For.
And Councillor Wynne?
For.
Chair, that is 9 or 2 abstains. That is passed.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to the next application. Painsbrook Farm, Abbey. Philip, you presenting this? Yeah, we'll just wait to clear the room, sorry. No problem, just to not disturb things.
Let's make a comment. Thank you very much. I don't understand what this means to me to have a home for each other. It means the world to me. And in the parts of any other carpets, I live on my own. And the other side, wherever it's Graven Arms, it's impossible for me to bring my family to there because of issues. This is why me and the wife moved away from everybody else to live our own life. Thank you very much.
Well, you can relax now.
I'm going to cry.
Okay. Emotional. Okay, so 67 Painsbrook Farm. Ready to go? Thank you, Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application proposes construction of 2 free-range poultry houses with feed bins and ancillary equipment on the adjacent to an existing free-range poultry unit at Painsbrook Farm, Hadnall, Shrewsbury. There are no updates to the report. The application is made in full and is accompanied by an environmental statement. The application proposes up to 64,000 birds, egg-laying birds, which would mean 32,000 birds in each of the two sheds. There is also 32,000 birds in the existing shed alongside the site. The amount of birds exceeds the threshold of Schedule 1 EA development, and hence an environmental statement required in support of the application, and a requirement for committee consideration in accordance with the council's constitution. Application site is outlined in red on the screen above you. This shows the location of the two sheds, proposed sheds. The existing one to the north, here it is, that's the existing one. Then there's one proposed alongside it here, and another one here. And why you're wondering what the red line is, so bird ranging areas is included in this. There's indication of the block height in relation to the surrounding area. That shows two bird ranging areas in relationship to each shed. I accept there is currently bird flu epidemic on at the moment, so they're not allowed outside, but when the flu passes, this is an application where birds are allowed to roam outside in those areas for each shed as designated with the different colours. This is a plan of the proposed elevations, floor plans and elevations, very similar to the existing shed alongside. That's the second shed. Right, access to the site is from directly off the A49 along Painsbrook Road, here where the arrows are. The arrows are indicating where lay-bys are in place, passing bays, because obviously it's a single track road leading to the site, which goes through Painsbrook Farm Yard and around the corner to the site where the sheds are located alongside a former airfield. Now there's photographs of the site. That's showing the site, a side view out from the site. Very flat land, quite sparse of vegetation. However, that's the site of the one shed, where the one shed will go. The other's alongside the existing shed, and that's where the other one is. And finally, a photograph of the existing shed. That is what the two new ones will look like. The agricultural land around it is actually grade 2, and although quite heavy, I was there recently, and I noted how wet it was around there, and on the road leading to the site. However, members will call this development as a previous application for the development was subsequently refused by this committee at the April 2022 meeting, owing to incomplete information being submitted in support of the application. The current proposal is considered acceptable on all issues except for manure management and disposal. I appreciate and acknowledge that the agent has recently submitted further information on this. However, as I've indicated already, this is environmental impact assessment Schedule 1 development. Therefore, we have environmental impact assessment regulations to adhere to. Officers are of the opinion that information is incomplete, in that it's not clear in what was happening with the manure, although yesterday we received further information indicating it would go into an AD plant. However, again, that needs clarification and confirmation, etc. And we need to advertise it under EIA regulations and also consult with the council's regulatory services. As I've indicated, this matter is considered insufficient on the environmental statement in relationship to the environmental statement, which officers consider cannot be relied on at this stage with the application. You'll also note in the report there are minor issues about drainage. However, I am confident that this latter matter can be resolved. Officers consider the manure management plan does not go into sufficient enough detail and assessment is required, and not just a management plan. It was suggested at one stage that the manure is going to be transferred to a company down in Hereford, by road down to Hereford. However, that report did indicate that the manure could either go to an AD plant or be spread in agricultural land. Obviously, that manure would be as a direct or indirect result of this development on this site, and you cannot move the problem from one area to another without having adequate consideration to the impacts. Based on the unknown effects of the manure that will be generated on site, the environmental statement in support of the application is considered by officers to be insufficient, and thus the application not complying with relevant local plan policies, and as such the recommendation is one of refusal for the reasons as set out at the start of the report, which indicates the application falls short of the requirement of EIA Regulations 2017 in that it has potential to have significant potential direct and indirect adverse impacts on the environment, and insufficient information has been provided in relation to manure management and its disposal. This is considered a byproduct of the development, and as such the environmental statement in support of the application does not meet the requirements of EIA regulations. As such, it is considered that the proposal does not comply with policies CS5, CS6, CS17 and CS18 of the Shropshire Core Strategy, along with policies MD2 and MD7B of the Sandbelt. Also, there's the National Planning Policy Framework, and as indicated in the Town and Country Planning Environmental Impact Assessment Regulations 2017. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That concludes my presentation on this application.
Thank you, Philip. We have 3 speakers on this. I think all the support. So, could I have the first one, please, come to Sarah Parker, Parish Council. So you have 3 minutes with like a 30-second warning.
I'm not going to be long with them. The Parish Council visited the existing unit and were impressed with the building and the overall management of the site. We felt that the eggs produced are from free-range hens who, under normal circumstances when we don't have avian flu, are able to enjoy life as they have evolved to live it compared to battery and barn hens. The Parish Council appreciated the high welfare standards of the hens that are being used to produce our food and felt that this kind of enterprise should be supported. The Parish Council also felt that the 2 additional sheds being proposed provided local employment, not only providing well-needed employment, but also reducing the need for people to travel to work. I've actually witnessed people cycling along the track to their employment. The existing shed has caused little impact to the local community. The egg collection lorry is noticeably courteous and respectful of local residents, livestock, and the equine community that all ride their horses along that road. Additional traffic has been negligible for the existing single chicken shed, and it's not been raised as a concern to the by the local community at any of the parish council meetings. In addition, traffic flow has improved since the erection of the first shed, thanks to the pullings that have been put in to allow for the lorry to pass. There have been concerns raised over the disposal of waste, which I understand and respect, but we understand now that the waste is being removed by a professional company as being, I think the term is 100% digested. It's not my area of expertise, which we obviously support, as this means the waste product should have little impact on the local area. The Parish Council is happy to support this application.
Thank you very much for that. Makes a change, but
The Parish Council say something.
Right, about the next speaker. Oh, the local member, which is written before. Miranda, you'd like to read that, please?
Thank you, Chair. This is from the local member, Councillor Simon Jones. As the local Shropshire councillor, I would have requested to speak to the Northern Planning Committee in favour of this application, but I will be out of the county on the 4th of April. I would ask that the Planning Committee consider my comments during their deliberations. I fully support this application. There has been quite a lengthy history to this particular development, and I understand that the applicant, Mr. Brisbane, is now either satisfied or put in place measures to satisfy the relevant EIA regulations required. I respectfully ask the Planning Committee to allow the application with the pre-commencement condition that sufficient manure management and disposal information be supplied to satisfy the EIA regulations 2017 if they are so minded.
Thank you very much. Right, we have Sean Jones and Andy Brisbane, but I've allowed them 2 minutes each. So would the first one, should it Sean coming up first? Yep, whichever.
Yeah.
Not sure. If you introduce yourself so we know which is which, is that okay?
Yeah, Andrew Brisbane.
And you're the applicant?
I'm the applicant, yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
You have 2 minutes, would you like 30 seconds?
No, I should be all right.
Okay, just compromise.
Yeah. Okay, good afternoon. I'd like to seek the committee support today for the application in front of you. This process started in March 2020 when the application was submitted. 3 years later, and the application unfortunately has still not been approved. My small farming enterprise of 400 acres is an existing free-range layer unit which was granted consent in 2019. It has created 3 local jobs and helped to boost agricultural production at a critical time, despite a significant increase in fixed costs and making virtually zero profit last year. Members of the committee will be aware that egg production is down across the board, hence the empty shelves in the supermarket. As a 4th generation farmer, it's imperative that the farming business is healthy as possible for the next generation. I do not farm thousands of acres, and therefore option to enhance and diversify our enterprise is limited. To date, I've spent over £96,000 on this process, and that is more than double the amount budgeted and has all had to be borrowed. This is an outstanding issue in relation to manure management. While various reports and evidence have been provided, the application has been recommended for refusal. I feel this is frustrating as we now have an agreement with a local farmer for the manure to go to their digester. After 3 years in the system and having ticked all relevant boxes, I appeal to you today to take a pragmatic approach to this sensible, comprehensive and important application which is coming of local and national significance. The proposal will help to employ more local people, produce vital food for the country and ensure our small family farm is sustainable for the next generation. I hope the committee will agree that it's critical to protect small farms at the time where pressures and costs have been so high, and I hope for the reasons stated the committee will agree that this item can be granted with any reasonable conditions as necessary. Thank you very much.
Well done, thank you very much. Right, so Sean, yes? That's right. Yeah, okay. You've got 2 minutes as well. Would you like a warning?
Please.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm Sean Jones. Good afternoon, members. I'm the agent for the application. The officer recommendation refers to the benefits of the proposal and including egg supply and jobs. The report identifies one concern, which is the indirect effects of the manure. Having researched a number of recent planning approvals, I'd like to refer to a poultry application at Slape approved by this committee on the 7th of March, where the manure there was going to go to a digester. There was a letter confirming that, and it was on that basis that that application was approved in terms of treatment of the manure. Another application at Kinton near Nascliffe was approved in approximately 2000 with a similar arrangement with a local farm that has a digester, whereby the manure would just be travelling a few miles. The applicant has secured an arrangement with a firm from Herefordshire that can handle the manure going to a digester, but he's also secured very recently a similar arrangement with a digester at Lear Cross near Ponsbury, which naturally being closer is a better alternative. So we've got a very good solution on the table, consistent with other applications that this committee has approved recently. So I think we've filled the missing link. The application has parish council support of the local member. There's only one objection. There are very few poultry applications are in that position. So I encourage you please to support the principle of the application today, but giving the officer the necessary authority to carry out the advertising as necessary to complete the EIA process, and so that after that timescale the decision notice can be issued. But I'm happy to answer any questions if there are any. thank you for your time, but I encourage you to support it, please.
Thank you, Sean. Well timed. Perfect. Right, okay. Billy, would you like to come back on anything before we open the floor?
My phone's got nails. I do apologise, Shelley. I think it's the first time it's ever happened, though.
Really?
Yes. First of all, I'd say, as you'll see in the report, the parish council do support the application. No issue there. I believe there was 3 letters of objections. One of them has specifically raised the issue of manure management. I'd like to bring to members' attention, while the 2 examples of the agent is referred to is quite right, that was included as part of the application process in order for us to go through procedures with EIA. This information about the AD plant in B Cross only came to us yesterday. We have procedures to go through, and I only need to remind members we've had an appeal at Tasley where the very same issue has arose. We still have not received that inspector's appeal decision, and as it happens, the case officer for that application is sitting 2 up from me in this room today, and I'm sure he would vouch for my concerns as outlined to you in this application with regards the concerns about manure management, which has been brought to the agent's attention. Unfortunately, we are where we are, as the application needing to come to committee. It's been registered with us for some time. That's all I've got to say. Thank you.
Thank you. We have had 4 indicated already. So, yeah, it's so close, but so far. That's my little Vince first.
Words of wisdom, Chair. Words of wisdom. You put it right, or words about not phones and things like that. Listen, I'm obviously this has come to us before. I'm free range hens, egg production, food security. You can use a load of terms. I am broadly supportive of this, but, and this is a big but, without the full EIA compliance, I don't see how we can approve it. That said, I don't think it's very far away, and obviously stuff has slid in rather unfortunately at the last minute, but would make it potentially supportable. So I guess the question I'm going to ask is whether we would be able to defer this so that the information that is required to complete it and tick the box, rather than kick it out and make them start again, if that would be a possibility, and if it is a possibility, then that's what I would propose.
That's what I was going to say.
All that.
Yeah.
3 seconds, 5 seconds. We've got a list of people to speak, but we've got 7 seconds. Edward first and second of that. But can we just have a reply from you first, Edward, please?
If members wish to go down that route, yes, they could, and I think that'd be better than delegate to us, delegate to officers, because this is Schedule 1 development, remember? Yeah. And the scheme delegation says all development that's subject to Schedule 1 development needs to come before committee. If it was delegated, you'd be delegating on information that was part of the Schedule 1 development that I think needs to come before you.
Well, we need to be satisfied that it's done.
So I've got several people down here to speak, but I mean, that was my thoughts. It's just not quite there. It hasn't quite gone over the line. David has a different opinion, do you?
No, I support.
So you support that? Yeah. Is everybody in the same sort of mind?
Yeah. Yes.
Edward?
No, absolutely. I'm with you. I just had we talked about sewage earlier, disposal and all that sort of stuff. And I just had a read it follow my effluent through into the road and through Wen. Been serious. Though, if this is done, as you say, this will be the way forward, to be honest. And I would second that, whatever's been said by Vince, to go forward. Yeah.
So I think we're all happy with that. It's just not quite there. I'm sorry about that. So we're going to go with deferral. I'm going to show hands on this refusal. So we've got a second for deferral. All those in favour, please show. Unanimous. We'll get it sorted out, okay? Thank you very much. Right. move on to the next item.
Another hour.
So, yeah, here you go.
Right, he's chair.
Okay.
Leave the room, everybody.
Chair was left the room. Vice Chair takes the chair as it's the,
Here's one.
Exactly.
you all ready or not?
It's a hard job.
You ready? This is going to be the solar one, which belongs to the chairman. So the vice chairman's taken over. Who's going to propose this? There's a problem with the presentation.
It's one that nice coming back.
But
Right, we're ready.
Are you ready?
Yeah.
Calvin. Ready? Calvin's going to have a go. Nice to see you, Calvin. Calvin, do you want to introduce yourself because you didn't do it earlier?
Better do, yeah. Kelvin Hall, Principal Planning Officer.
Kelvin.
Oh, Kelvin. It's Kelvin.
Your brother's Calvin, he's Calvin.
I know.
At least you've got away from the chickens.
Temporarily. This is an application. It relates to a solar farm which has already been permitted, and the application is to extend the time period for the operational life of the solar farm. It's come to committee because the site is owned by an elected member. In this case, it's Councillor Paul Wynne. You can see the extent of the permitted site there. It's been generating renewable energy for around 7 years now. Permissions for a temporary period of 30 years, following which the Commission requires that it's removed from the site. The application proposes to extend this to 40 years, as the panels are expected to continue to operate efficiently well beyond the 30-year currently defined term. There's been no objections received from any consultees or any public comments raised. You'll see there on the plan there's an existing landscape approved plan that will remain in place throughout the duration of the operational site, and it's also recommended that the biodiversity management plan is extended as well for the whole proposed extended life of the site, so that those benefits can continue to endure for the full 40-year period. Clearly, there are renewable energy benefits to retaining the site. However, it will also be remaining within the landscape for an additional period of time as well. But on balance, officers consider that the benefits of the scheme do outweigh those negative elements and recommend that planning permission is granted. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Calvin. I don't think we need a long debate on this. Just a technicality.
So I formally propose we.
Well,
Vince
put his hand up first, Ted. So
But he was just scratching his arm.
You can have a go there, Ted.
Yeah, you'll have to wait, Ted. Yeah, I was going to propose it. If Ted wants to propose it,
I don't care, I'll second it. I do think it is worth just making sure that everybody understands, and I'm sure they do anyway, that Paul doesn't actually own the business or the panels. He owns the land upon which they stand, and it's rented from him. But obviously, because he doesn't, he gets an income from that. Then obviously left the room. But, I'm sorry, am I keeping you away?
Okay, we've had a proposal. Did you finish this? And Ted was seconded. Can we just put hands up, Miranda?
Mr. Chairman, let's ask a technical question, if you don't mind. Just to the officers. So we're now looking at 40 years for these solar sites. What's the average lifespan now across the whole of Shropshire for all the new solar sites we've approved in the last 2 or 3 years?
Depends on the panel.
It does depend. The earlier ones came in about 25 years life, and then it slowly increased the 30 years, and then we're getting a few applications to extend from 25, from 30 up to 40. I think at the moment, that's the time period we're looking at for these, about 40 years.
So my point was on the right, which for that one. Is it something we should think of as a committee or as a council, that perhaps we grant a 15-year extension to existing sites because of the fact that panels are lasting much longer and the benefits are so much outweighed because of damage? Just a thought.
Well, I presume, Calvin, that most people don't need to ask permission. It's done already, is it? Just because he's a council, he's asking permission?
Yeah.
No, they do have to ask permission because there is a condition on that says how long the period is for. And
Right.
that could be
And normally
25,
they're
30 years or
removed at the end
whatever.
of it.
So each one will get visited as and when they mature.
It used to be standard practice for renewable energy applications 25 years, similar to wind farms.
Right.
However, in recent times, solar farms have increased. However, you'd still have to look at each one on its individual.
It's just a thought.
Okay, can we just take a hands up vote?
Yeah, Vice Chair, yes.
Yeah, that's all in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you. And Calvin, can you call Paul back?
No.
We don't stay on to the next one anyway.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. 2 minutes over there, Vince.
Yeah, I'll stay here.
It's a two.
Okay. As we said at the beginning of the meeting, it's fallen on me. I guess it's because I was the vice chair for the 4 years prior to this term. So obviously the application is in front of you. I'm not going to make heavy weather of it because I'm sure you've all read the report in full. The report is now going to be presented by Philip.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Right, this application is made in full and proposes erection of a single detached garage at a dwelling known as the Coppers, Park Street, Oswestry. There are no updates to this application. The dwelling is semi-detached, 2-storey and located alongside Oswestry Police Station. The proposal is for a detached single bay garage on land to the front of the dwelling, and presently on site are 2 unauthorised mobile industrial units, which it is the applicant's intention to have them removed off site. Application is presented to committee for the reason as set out in section 3 of the report. Although the garage is proposed to be constructed in front of the dwelling, this dwelling has the benefit of mature hedge alongside its frontal boundary, and this hedge is considered, on balance, makes the proposal visually acceptable. It is recommended, if members are mindful to support the application, that the condition retaining this hedge in perpetuity is attached to the list of suggested conditions as set out in Appendix 1 attached to this report. In other words, along with the conditions as suggested in Appendix 1, an additional condition to retain the hedge along the front element side of site. I'll now run through the plans. First one, as you can see, is the dwelling hatched in red, semi-detached, and the dwelling attached to a dwelling to the north, and then the police station is the large building to the south. If I can get the mouse onto it. I've got cat and mouse. That's the application site outlined in red. There's the house called the Coppers with the proposed garage here, and there's the hedge I was referring to. That's a clearer photograph of the layout plan, showing 2 car parking spaces in front of the house and the single bay garage here. That's the proposed garage elevations and floor plan. And now they follow some photographs of the site. There's the house there, and here's the hedge. And you'll notice a dwelling up the road also has a garage in front of it, although it's facing a different way, but it's similar in design and scale to that. It is noted that there have been 2 letters of objections received from members of the public. Oswestry Town Council have not objected to the principle of the development, as set out in the report. In conclusion, on balance, the proposed garage is considered to be acceptable within the context of the overall street scene, and in consideration of existing dwelling and residential amenity issues, and thus in accordance with relevant local plan policies as set out in the report. As such, the recommendation is one of approval, subject to the conditions as set out in Appendix 1, attached to the report, and an additional condition as discussed in order to ensure the boundary hedge is retained in perpetuity. And that concludes my presentation on this application, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, just before I bring Joyce in, it is called Poppers because it used to be the former police house.
I was thinking that.
But there we go, Joyce.
Yeah. You stole my words, or some of them.
Oh.
Yeah, I know this street really well because my mother-in-law used to live just off it.
Used to be in jail.
Yeah. They'll room one by one.
It won't interfere with the street scene at all. I think it'll fit in quite nicely and I have no problem with this and I'd be really happy to move it. Thank you.
Good, and I presume, thanks Gary, Gary's seconding that. I presume that's with the extra unwritten condition put in about the hedge. Yes?
Obviously, yes.
Okay, anybody else?
Please,
Ted.
is the removal of the containers, is that included in it?
Yeah, be a condition attached.
They wouldn't be able to put a garage in otherwise. Yeah. All right, anybody else? No, in which case I am going to move to the vote and it will be a show of hands because I don't think there's been any dissent shown. So all those in favour, please show. Thank you very much, councillors. That's unanimous.
They can come in now.
They can come back in now. Calvin, as opposed to Calvin.
They've only got coffee downstairs.
They probably have. I've got a
Strap
cigarette.
them down.
So with that,
No, we've finished.
agenda. So,
Item 10.
Oh, sorry. I turned it over now. I've got-
Appeals, David.
Appeals, okay, appeals, there we go. Thank you. Yeah, the appeals. Any comments or
Very little comment, only to note the appeals that have come in, as set out on the schedule of appeals in front of you. And the appeal decisions we received, two of which have been allowed. And two dismissed. Obviously, one of the ones allowed is the Hencott one. So I'm sure members will note that and how things are. And other than that, I have nothing further to add. Thank you.
You can go for dinner there.
Any comments on that or not?
Just a brief one, thank you. With the town council's decision on whether it goes to judicial review takes place in 1 week's time.
Okay, right.
On what ground, he said?
Well, that is why we've asked for legal advice as to whether there is the grounds for judicial review. And then on that basis, you'll make a decision.
Right, leave it at that. Thank you very much. Dates the next meeting is 2nd of May. Thank you very much for your attendance. Good meeting, good debate. Thank you.
We must say good cheer.
Bye then.